And we are recording. Sunny, welcome to the Honey Badger Diaries.
Thanks for having me.
So, to be very honest, just upfront, when I reached out to you, I thought you were still at Unocoin in India. But apparently, you're at Kraken now. What happened there?
Yeah, it's a bit of a story. But as of about 8 or 9 months ago, so in the middle of 2019, with kind of all the drama taking place in India, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about on this interview, at one point, I essentially joined Kraken as the head of global business development and have been working here since.
Kraken is sucking up all the talent from the industry these days, it seems.
Yeah. Oh, you know what Kraken is, right? It's like this, isn't it like this massive, mysterious sea monster that eats everything in the ocean?
Apparently, yeah, so it's fitting.
Right? Yeah, I know. There's been some amazing hires lately. I don't know if you heard Marco Santori came on board. We've
Yeah.
got Dan Held and
Mhm.
Pierre, and it's just nonstop. I mean, it's like the Avengers
Pete
of
Rizzo
Bitcoin.
made its way to Kraken as well.
Pete Rizzo. Yep.
Oh, I still got my thing open. That's making a sound. I'm closing it right now. I can cut that out of the podcast, but not out of the YouTube recording. How long were you at Unocoin?
Well, I was one of the co-founders of Unocoin. And we probably picked up the domain in 2011 and started the company in 2012 and officially launched, picked up the domain in 2012 and officially launched the company December 2013 at what we call the Global Bitcoin Conference in Bangalore at the Sheraton. And it's been quite the trip.
It was the first exchange in India, I think. First Bitcoin
Yeah,
exchange.
it was a first. Well, it was the first, I guess the more appropriate term would be brokerage. So it was, an easy to use platform where anybody could come in and buy some Bitcoin just at the click of a button. hmm So it wasn't, I mean, it is an exchange. There's something called Uno DAX today. So there's an exchange as well, but it started off as a brokerage and that's still available. It's very popular.
Yeah. What has been happening with Bitcoin in India? It was banned for a while. Was it banned? What was the status? What was the issue there?
Yeah, no, it was never banned. I mean, I think the news did a poor job of covering some of the developments in India, but it was never banned. What had happened almost 2 years ago is that the central bank of India, the Reserve Bank of India, essentially stopped allowing banks from dealing with cryptocurrency companies and for Bitcoin companies. So that was essentially what happened, and I mean it was in effect a bank ban, but it was not a full ban of the currency or of the asset in India.
And you were still at Unocoin then. So how did that sounds like Unocoin couldn't continue at all, or how did it continue? What happened there?
Um, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like to kind of make sense of Unocoin, it might make a little bit more sense to share a little bit about maybe how it came about. Would it make sense to just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll just So just by way of background, so I studied. So I was born and raised in Canada. I studied electrical engineering. I ran a financial brokerage before the last big crash in '07, '08. Spent about 8 years in robotics as doing business development. And then in 2012 or so, 2011, 2012, I moved out to India on behalf of that company, and that was when I discovered Bitcoin. And it was interesting because, when I first discovered it, there was really nobody that I knew that was kind of into it. And I was watching what was happening in Toronto. There was guys like Anthony Diorio and, Vitalik and a lot of these other people really starting to do meetups and get people involved. And so that got me excited about it. And so I started doing the same thing in Bangalore. And we started doing these really fancy Bitcoin meetups, not at coffee shops like everyone does it, but we picked like the fanciest hotel. Like it's called the Leela Palace. Like it's not even a 5-star. I would consider it like a 6-star hotel. It like blows anything we've seen on this side of the world, like out of the water. Just beautiful, beautiful hotel. And we go in there and we just kind of set the standard. We were just like, all right, like we wanted serious people and people that were passionate about it to come out. Through that, I ended up meeting Satvik, Harish, a bunch of other people. We iterated on a whole bunch of different ideas. We did Bitcoin mining. We tried conferences and maybe 10, 12 different other ideas. And really what kind of led us to the idea around Unocoin was we said, hey, look, it's so hard to buy Bitcoin here in India. So why don't we, launch a service that makes it easy for people in India? And I'll never forget, like the week we launched the service, we'd all left Bangalore, we were in Bombay, and we were out and about, and orders were piling up, and it was kind of to our surprise, like we weren't really expecting people to use the platform, right? Because everything else we tried prior to that failed miserably, and we thought, well, why would people use this? But right off the bat, it was getting a lot of traction. And we launched Unocoin at, like I said, at this conference at the Sheraton. And, in 2013, back then, we knew that regulators would, need to get involved, or they'd eventually get involved anyways. And so, at that point, we'd even invited regulators to come to the event if they wanted to. And to my surprise, again, we actually, had someone from the RBI attend our event. A week after that, they'd issued a notice on their website. So this is in January 2014. They'd issued a notice saying, look, Bitcoin and these types of things are volatile. There are concerns around its security, and that was the beginning. That was the beginning of really like our, I guess you could say, relationship with the Reserve Bank of India. And that kind of carried forward. Every year, every 2 years, they would reissue the same notice on their website, and it would be a big kind of thing. And then eventually 2 years ago, so it's 2020 now, so 2018-ish, they issued a notice, and it was essentially something on their website that stated that banks were not allowed to deal with cryptocurrency companies. And so, that made it obviously very challenging for the community and for all the Bitcoin companies. For us, and if you're interested, we can go into, some of the stories that took place in between, because it was quite a bit. But after about a year or so of battling the central bank, we had to be realistic, and we had to, unfortunately, downsize the company quite a bit. I think we were at about 120 or 130 employees. We had to cut back, almost 70% or 80% of our team members. And at that team, the founders also decided that we would engage with other projects and kind of move forward from there. And quite frankly, most of us didn't expect that we would be victorious, because I think in like all of history, the Supreme Court in India has ever overruled the Reserve Bank of India, I think once before this. This was like the second time it's ever happened. So it's pretty unprecedented. And I'll never forget what Jesse said to me. He was like, look, you're going through some hard times. I know, you've worked hard, obviously, with everything you're doing in India for Bitcoin and the community. And he's like, just hold on to everything you got, and just why don't you come on board and help us out with Kraken. And I thought that was a really, really nice gesture. And, and it was a very uncommon, I think, offer. I don't think most entrepreneurs would say something like that. But I think that kind of just speaks to why, I'm such a big fan of Kraken and the company here, is that it seems like they really care.
Jesse has been taking a pretty principled stance also on stuff like the New York agreement, which I can appreciate that. It seems like a legit guy. I've only met him once.
Yeah. But just because you brought up Jesse, I was going to say principled, smart, and humble. Those are the three words that I always use to describe Jesse when people ask me. Whenever someone asks, well, why are you working at Kraken? It's like, yeah, good luck finding people like that.
The other thing I asked, and I do want to get back to that, you mentioned that Unocoin had to downsize in the midst of all of this trouble. But how could it continue at all without a bank? How did that work? Or, I mean, did it have a bank? Like, it couldn't have, right?
Yeah. So we could do basic things like just, obviously cover our expenses and whatnot. It's just, we weren't allowed to facilitate trades with customers. And so it's very difficult, it's very challenging. And obviously when your customers can't send you funds as an exchange, that's debilitating.
Yeah, I would think.
Mm.
Sounds like a little bit of an issue to deal with if you're in exchange. Anyway, so how long did you live in India? You moved back
I
recently
was
then.
living there. Yeah, it's been
You
few
were born
years.
in Canada?
I was born in Canada to East Indian parents, and then I had moved out there in 2011, and then moved back to Canada in 20, I think it was 16 or 17, Aaron.
Right.
And but I do consider, I mean, yeah, I consider Toronto my home now. I was born and raised in the west part of Canada, but Toronto's been my home for almost 20 years now, or the better part of 20 years.
So this podcast is actually about Corona stuff. It might surprise you. Have you been keeping up with the Corona
Oh, of
crisis
course.
in India?
Of course. In fact, I think there's a lot of parallels between Corona and Bitcoin, but like in opposite directions. um,
I think I've
yeah,
mentioned
sorry.
something similar on the podcast, but I'm curious to hear why you say that.
Hey, look, Aaron, I was freaking out about this thing back in January, and it was because of all the weirdos that I follow on Twitter that are all these like Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maximalists,
Right.
and I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe it's that honey badger quality in all of us, but something, I mean, whether it was like Balaji or whether it was all these like people that were just kind of warning people about what was happening, and yeah, so I don't know, like for me, I was quite concerned about this pretty early on, and so we had prepared to the best of our abilities. In fact, I would say I was like much more stressed out and worried like prior to the day that the WHO actually said that it was a pandemic, because I could tell it was a pandemic. If you look at the definition of what a pandemic is, it's a pandemic, but nobody's really saying it is. And so when CNN and then WHO eventually said it, that's when I felt I went from like being crazy and everyone around me being normal to me being like calm, and then everyone around me being like kind of crazy. And so anyways, I think that's yeah. So it's funny, I think the parallels are, they're probably pretty obvious, right? Like the exponential nature of it. And I think yeah, they're both invisible. They're both I don't know, there's probably a lot of things, but like I said, I think they're similar but opposite.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap, and the other thing you mentioned is also interesting. That how a lot of Bitcoiners were sort of early to recognize the threat, and then once everyone else caught on, the rest is more panicky about it. It seems, while Bitcoiners, a lot of them are now sort of trying to take a calmer approach. Uh, Speaking of early warning signals, I remember probably back in February or whenever, that India was one of the countries that people were sort of concerned about. Like, if it hits India, it could get real bad. What do you think? Do you
Well,
agree?
again, having lived in India, and and having kind of visited quite often and everything, and having going through everything I've had, yeah, I was definitely concerned. I was very worried about it, especially in places like in India, mainly, because of challenges like hygiene and population, and the medical system, perhaps not being as robust as maybe here. So yeah, I definitely I had worries about it. But then there was like, I don't know how, and by the way, I'm not a scientist or an epidemiologist or anything, but there are some other factors that people kind of point to as well, right? Which is like I don't know if the heat actually plays anything into it, but so it's a bit like hard for me to make conclusions, or say one thing or another. But I will say one thing that I found quite interesting was that I think I can't even say the name of whatever that drug that people say may be a solution, but I think India is one of the
Hydrochloroquine.
hydro, yeah, something like that. I think India is one of the largest manufacturers of it. And so yeah, so I mean, I guess in the end, maybe they're not going to be all that poorly off.
Yeah,
But
they're a
right,
major
yeah.
manufacturer of many medicines, I think, right? And didn't they call for a ban on the export of certain medicines. Have you heard this?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. There are, bans do happen in India.
Yes.
But yeah, but I'm not sure about which one you're referring to. But no, India's, look, I mean, I'm obviously a bit biased, but I've always felt very bullish about India. I've always felt that, India's got a very bright future. Yeah, I know this is more about coronavirus, but I know you're also a Bitcoiner. But I was just going to quickly say the reasons that I think India is so compelling from a Bitcoin perspective is, people refer to Bitcoin as digital gold, right? So where in the world do people like gold more than India? No place, right? So India is, like, people are, like, I remember when I first moved there, back in 2011 or whatever. I remember on like paydays, you would see lineups. Like every 10th store in India is like a gold store, or like a bank selling gold or whatever. And it's like people literally line up to convert their fiat into gold. And it's just like normal. It's just like a normal thing. So number one, so the largest kind of like gold, lover hoarder in the world is India. Number two, Bitcoin is digital gold. India has more programmers, more IT professionals, than anywhere else in the world. So, I feel that, again, you don't have to be a technical person to love Bitcoin, but when you look at like early adopters, right, it helps to be able to understand ones and zeros a bit. And so I feel that, again, so that propensity towards loving gold, and then the ability to kind of understand, kind of code, is, again, like this perfect storm. The third thing, India, so people talk about Bitcoin, oh, it's going to change remittance, blah, blah, blah. Well, what country remits more money into the country than India? None, right? $100 billion a year. 10-20% of that's going towards unsaid remittance companies. Then, what if Bitcoin was just able to come in and kind of take over that market? And then the last point is I think something like 25% of the world's youth or something like that, or some ridiculous number of like young people live in India, right? And it just goes on and on and on. There's all these like unbanked population, et cetera, et cetera. I've always felt that India is a very fascinating place for Bitcoin. Even at Kraken, we've got a lot of our biggest traders are from India, right? And so, yeah, definitely a lot of, yep.
How's the economy in India dealing with this crisis? Do you have any idea?
I mean, like I said, because I'm based in Canada. Like, I don't see kind of like on the ground feedback, but I do hear from, my friends, and um, I think, to be frank, I think it's similar to everywhere else. Like, it's a lockdown. Everyone's, staying home, working from home. I don't think it's fundamentally, like, it's not like mayhem where people are running around in the streets like all wild. I think, mind you, I have seen some videos on YouTube to the contrary, with like police hitting people with like these plastic sticks and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, there were some riots. I think migrant workers in Surat. I was reading about this. They were protesting the
Mm.
lockdown, and there was some violence there.
Wait, was this related to that? Like, I know India has been going through some political unrest as well, right? I mean, I don't want to get into it, but you're familiar with some of that recently, right? Was it related to that, or are you talking about something related to the coronavirus?
This is very coronavirus related. It was lockdown. It was a
Mm.
protest against the lockdowns.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, no, I hadn't been following that all that closely, to be honest. I know in Toronto, I know the lockdown's been pretty stiff. People haven't really been, it doesn't look like people are violating it en masse. My sister-in-law actually works for, she's a doctor at one of the hospitals where there's like the most number of patients here in Toronto. So, we get some updates. We try and help out as much as we can here and there in terms of their helping with their groceries and making masks at home for, patients that come into their hospitals. But I mean, mask shortages, that's something that I'm sure all of us are hearing about, right? But yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. How about you guys? How's everything? Yeah, where are you? Are you in Germany?
No, Netherlands.
Netherlands? How are things over there?
We're in what's called, they're calling it an intelligent lockdown. So everything's closed apart from, except for crucial, supermarkets and these kinds of things. And then we are allowed to leave the home. We're allowed to be outside in groups of, well, not in groups, groups of two. maximum, and then other than that, in the rest of the country, they're calling it a 1.5 meter economy now. So we're supposed
You
to
know,
stay 1.5 meters from each other.
Aaron, on this topic of COVID, right? Like we talked about Bitcoin and COVID, right? But the thing that I find to be super fascinating about this time, right, that we're living through is this correlation between science and freedom, that people are kind of trying to like work their way through, right? So what I mean by that is there's this like supposedly there's this very strong scientific reason as to why we're supposed to self-isolate and not be out there, right?
Mm.
But then it's kind of the science that it's dictating what we should be doing in terms of self-isolating, but the idea of self-isolating is kind of like freedom crushing, and it's trying to like kind of reconcile these two worlds is it's like do not compute, it's like kind of thing happening, I think, for a lot of people. I don't know if that makes any sense at
Well,
all.
what do you think of all the lockdowns? Is it something you agree with?
This is something I agree with. So if your question is am I under lockdown? Yes. So that probably means at some level I'm in agreement with it. I'm not actively going out and, hooking up with all my friends and doing like parties on the street. So yes, I would say on that level, I'm I'm following it. Do I question, what the hell is going on right now? Absolutely, right? Like as a Bitcoiner, I think we're always asking these questions, right? But I will say one thing though. I feel so fortunate that I get to be in this Bitcoin space during this time, because I mean, let's face it, Bitcoin was made for this moment, right?
Why?
So in some ways, I'm obviously super sad about the kind of the state of the world and what's happening. But I think it was Jameson who you'd interviewed recently, who said that something like 50 Bitcoin networks, not 50 Bitcoins, but 50 Bitcoin networks worth of money was printed, I think, in that first round or whatever. It's just like, okay, so let's see. I mean, is this Bitcoin thing going to work? Is it not? We don't have to wait 20 years to find out. I mean, it's either going to, show itself now or not. So
That,
I'm excited about the prospect of Bitcoin.
did you see that tweet by Brian Armstrong the other day? He showed a graph of people. Oh, I guess this is a competitor of you guys. Well, I'm gonna tell
Yeah,
him.
who's Brian? Who's Brian Armstrong?
The
I'm
Coinbase
sorry.
CEO.
No, Coinbase. I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, okay.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Well,
Carry on.
he tweeted a graph of people buying exactly $1,200 worth of
Oh yeah, I
Bitcoin,
saw that. I
which
saw
is
that.
like
I
the
saw that.
stimulus amount.
That was, of course, that was cute. Yeah.
And speaking of Jameson Lop, I think, what did he tweet? Like if every American did that, they couldn't even buy, 0.04 Bitcoin or something. I don't remember the tweet. Like there's not enough Bitcoin. Anyways, I don't remember the tweet, so this is a bad anecdote, but it was a good tweet, Sonny.
I'm a big fan of Jameson. I like him.
What else? What do you think is gonna happen in Canada in the near future? Are they speaking of easing the lockdown anytime soon?
I don't know. They're kind of flip-flopping. I mean, I heard Justin Trudeau say the other day that it might go on for a year and a half. Some people say that until the vaccine comes out, we might not go back to normalcy. Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest. I don't know. I would rather just be prepared mentally that it's going to take longer, and then have it be, have it be that I can go outside and have fun before then. But mentally, I'm preparing for kind of being in this state for a little bit. It sucks again, I know, for a lot of people out there.
Are
But
you?
for like, I was gonna just, sorry, Aaron, what was that?
No, go on.
Yeah, no, Aaron, I was gonna say is one kind of, I guess, cool thing is that Kraken, since its inception, has been remote work, and so everybody in the company works remotely. So there's almost, I don't know, whatever, a couple 900 people or 1,000 people. They're all working remotely, and so in terms of like how much it's affected my kind of day to day, it really hasn't, all that much. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true for all Bitcoiners.
Yeah, right.
This comes up in every other interview. Like people just tell me their life is basically the same.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, I earned. But thanks for. I was gonna say thanks for giving me this opportunity to even just share a bit about the story in India. I do feel and kind of what's going on. Um, I do feel that a lot of the kind of major news outlets obviously they cover it kind of on kind of the surface level, but I said this in a recent Kraken blog post as well, is that the Indian community essentially took on the central bank of India and won for Bitcoin. Um, like obviously, again, I'm biased, but I can't think of like a more impressive accomplishment. Um, period, right? Like, I mean, if you look at the central bank, or if you look at the white paper that Satoshi wrote, it talks about the inefficiencies of third parties and like how Bitcoin was, kind of essentially developed to address that issue. So there's a lot of noise in this space. There's a lot of things that are happening, but I do feel that, um, I'm not gonna lie, like about a year ago, even I kind of felt disillusioned and I was like kind of losing hope, but I feel very lucky to be living during this time, and I feel like justice exists, and one of my kind of takeaways from this is I want to do more homework on how judges come to be. I don't know if you know much about that, but I don't, and I find it super interesting, and how like these people tend to be, at least from whatever experience I've had, they tend to be very common sense driven, and they're like normal humans in many ways, right? And so yeah, I don't know much about it, but like my two takeaways was that justice does exist, and it takes time, but also just as like a footnote, like who are judges? Like how do they come to be? Like who elects them or doesn't elect them? And like how are they so grounded? But yeah, but thanks for helping shine a bit of a spotlight on kind of what's happening in India.
Have you guys at Kraken seen any sort of interesting volume in different countries throughout this crisis? Like, is it picking up somewhere more than somewhere else? Is this information you're at the freedom to
Well,
disclose?
so the volumes are public, right? I mean, at least the like the Kraken exchange volumes are all out there. Um, so yeah, on kind of the worst day, whenever it was, when the stock market dropped to its like low or whatever it was, yeah, I think Kraken did, tremendously well in terms of like volume and all of that, yeah, Kraken is doing really, really well as a company. And even during that downturn, a lot of other exchanges experience a lot of challenges, and they tend to go down at the exact moment when you need the most. Well, not Kraken is up there just running along just fine, and yeah, we got a lot of positive feedback from a lot of the traders saying that they were really impressed with how we handled some of that pressure.
Okay, so I usually start my podcast with sort of an overview of what's been going on in a specific country with Corona. We didn't really do that so far. Do you want to get into the
Yeah,
coronavirus thing in India, or to what extent is it
I
something?
mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm bored of Corona. I mean, I'll talk about it. I'm a bit like, I know this is like the main topic that you talk about,
Hey
but
man,
I mean,
we can talk about something else.
I mean, you ask me any questions you want. Look, my
Have you
sister-in-law
seen
works for the most infectious hospital. Like, that's pretty terrible, right? I don't think most people have that, even that kind of like insight into what's going on. So I do feel like I have insight, but I mean, what am I going to share that's not like, really that's new or exciting or different than what's happening everywhere in the world right now? I don't know. I mean, wear masks. I mean, this is all, I don't know. What I do find interesting again, is just like the narrative around like don't wear masks and wear masks, and if you don't wear a mask we'll put you in jail now, like all from like one end of the spectrum to the other in like a month. I
Right.
just find these kind of things super fascinating, again, as a Bitcoiner and somebody who's just like, I don't know. I look at the world as like almost like a petri dish a bit, and it's like, and again, and to me, I'm not against fiat, right? I think fiat plays a role. I mean, look what's happening, in Canada. Yes, like Ubi and people like, look, I told you, I spent 8 years in robotics. Okay. My wife is a mechatronics engineer. So if anyone knows the fears of automation and robotics, it's me. I've got a 3D printer to the right of me. I've got a drone to the left of me here. And so I do worry about things like, mass unemployment, being driven by automation and things like that. So maybe, fiat will have a place for people. What I like about Bitcoin, however, is that it's like a thermometer. It's like a measuring stick that holds everything else accountable. That's what I love about Bitcoin.
Well, that's a pretty interesting topic then. Let's forget about Corona, but you mentioned universal basic income. Is this something you sound fairly positive about it? Is that it? But
Yeah,
then
I'm against it because I like to think I'm freedom loving and I'm libertarian-esque. I mean, for me, it was like the path to Bitcoin. I didn't really share about it, but I remember Occupy Wall Street was strong was something that, like, because I'd spent time in the financial industry. It was like, why are all these people complaining about the financial industry? That was my first kind of like, maybe I need to like really go deeper. Then it was Ron Paul, obviously, with his like, his libertarian kind of like education that he drops on people. That was really what got me thinking about, or the importance of like freedom and liberty. This guy's not too popular anymore, I don't think, but Stefan something, he's a Canadian guy. He talks a lot about freedom. Anyway, so I guess, so from the perspective of um, freedom, I think it's very, very, fascinating. Sorry, Aaron, I kind of lost the question that you were asking again.
UBI.
Yeah, so I don't know, man, but would you have like a specific question? Like, do I like it? So first of all, if you
Well,
ask me about religion or politics or Ubi or coronavirus or anything, my answer is going to be like, I'm not going to probably give you like a very clear answer. I'm probably going to say I'm confused about all of it, right? Like, my wife is Christian, my parents are Hindu, like my friends are, but like, what religion are you saying? I have no clue, right? I read a lot about this stuff, and even money. If you're like, what's the future of money? I mean, my gut says it might be Bitcoin. It might be, but I'm not going to say it is for sure, right? Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. So Ubi, yes. So again, okay. So what disturbs me about it, obviously, is the notion that, again, if you're freedom loving, if you're a libertarian, if you believe in less governments and free markets, all of that, then Ubi kind of falls on the other side of the spectrum. But again, in a case like this, right? Like, what are people supposed to do, right? Like, what are people supposed to do? Like, are they supposed to starve essentially? That doesn't seem fair, especially when governments have this mechanism by which they can print money, and they do it for their friends. They do it for, the people that work at the bank. So why not do it for the average person? So again, I'm not convinced that it works. But it's interesting. It's interesting nonetheless. I do think Bitcoin, or something like Bitcoin, would make it easier to implement something like this as well.
easier?
But yeah, easier as in, yeah, I think to some extent, like, if you look at even like the way they're trying, or something like a stable coin, right? I think it would be maybe easier to get out in the hands of people, perhaps, because of just the way the technology works and all that. um but I'll be honest, Aaron, I haven't thought about it, fully. It sounds sexy at its kind of, at its face value, but it obviously smells, of, again, of a lot of things as well. So I don't know, but again, like I said, this notion of that, oh well, we'll just find jobs for everyone, robots aren't moving that fast. I don't know. I don't know if I also don't know if I believe that argument. I do think that automation is coming, and I drive a Tesla, and like, I know a lot of people drive cars for a living. So what are they going to do? My car, I went for a drive today. It was essential, right? However, it drove itself. So what happens 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, when every car drives itself? Are we going to tell everyone to become a programmer? I don't think that's realistic.
You're an amazing podcast guest, Sonny. You come on to just talk about whatever the fuck you feel like.
Yeah, man.
You mentioned religion. You want to get into that? Do you think are we seeing a biblical plague? What's going on?
Biblical plague. I said I'm not religious, but just for the guy upstairs, if he does exist, I go to church every Sunday with my wife. But I go because I really like hanging out with her. But anyways, but I gotta admit, before this thing hit, I was freaking out too. I was like, we should not be in crowded places. This that. Is a biblical plague? I don't know. I have no idea.
Oh, I had
Definitely
someone
sounds like something like that.
I had Kaniak on the show a couple of days ago. He was expecting the what's it called, Book of Revelations, to sort of start playing out now. You don't believe that?
Well, first ask me, do I believe in the Book of Revelations? Probably, I don't know. I haven't read it in full. I don't know. My approach to religion is I'm just hedging against that outcome that I'm wrong, right? So that's why like I said, I go to church with my wife and
Still
do
risk.
what I need to, just in case at the end of this thing I find out that, oh my God, she was right. Like I want to be able to say like, look, okay, yeah, I know I wasn't fully there, but I've been attending every weekend. Sorry, man, but I don't know if this is like the end of times or whatever. I doubt it. I sure hope not. Yeah, I have two little girls at home, so one thing I always tell people though is that before I discovered Bitcoin, I did not want to have kids. I was just like, this world is miserable. I even have a video on YouTube that probably a total of 10 people have watched, but it was from like 2010. It was me on stage at like a robotics conference talking to a bunch of like roboticists, and I was just like, the world seems like there's all these issues. There's like a financial, collapse and environmental, systemic. There's just everything seems like it's all falling apart. And it was only I remember when I discovered Bitcoin that I was just like, I think like this world deserves more kids. Like, yeah, we need to focus on that. The Bitcoin has just completely changed my life, and like I said, I think the fact that it's running like clockwork when like stock exchanges are coming down and governments are like having trouble functioning, it's just working like clockwork. I think again speaks to just how awesome it is. Yeah,
Is this
man.
is this
Sorry, I'm
how
just
you
like, yeah.
is this how you are in real life?
What do you
You,
mean?
you just talk about Bitcoin with everyone all the time.
Yeah, I try to. I try to. Whoever will listen to me, I when I started, yeah, those meetups and stuff, I probably tried to explain Bitcoin to people like thousands of times. I've got a little like a 30-second piece now that I use, and I find like that does the job. Like it doesn't matter if you're my grandma, if you're 4 years old. I've
Well,
got like a
it's 30 seconds, so go for it. What
yeah,
is it?
maybe. Okay, so no, I said 30 seconds to lure you in, but 30 seconds is my actual technical definition, but then I need a little bit of follow-up. But my technical definition is that Bitcoin is the world's first open source, decentralized digital currency and payment network. The reason most people find it confusing is because it's two things in one. It's a digital currency analogous to dollars or gold. It has a certain value. It goes up and down in time, goes up and down in value over time, and it's highly volatile. But over the last 10 years, it's gone up probably more than any other asset class in the history of mankind. And the other thing is it's like a payment network analogous to Visa or Western Union. It offers you rails for moving money or value from one place to another at the click of a button. That's my 30-second kind of piece. But then I kind of go into like different tangents and try and explain kind of, just how important it is and how it's limited and open source and all the benefits. But yeah.
What do you think of you asked for other topics, so I'm just gonna bring up stuff now.
Hit me up.
What do you think of the AI risk? Is this a risk? Are you with Elon Musk on that one?
Oh man, sorry. Have you read this book?
No?
I read
AI
this like
superpowers.
AI superpowers. Oh wow, it's not coming up. I think if I hold it close to me, there we
China
go. AI
Silicon.
superpower. So like by Kai Fu Lee, he used to work for. I got like 4 or 5 other books on AI. What do I think about AI? As in like
Do you think it's
what
a
a
threat? Are you with Elon Musk? Like, is it something we should be aware of that's gonna destroy us? That's gonna replace us?
uh so you follow Kurzweil and all of that? Like, do you know Raymond Kurzweil?
It sounds familiar, but you may have to
Okay,
explain it.
have you ever heard of the technological singularity?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So so there's this notion or this like prediction. Okay, so there's this guy named Raymond Kurzweil. I believe at one point he was like Bill Gates's like future advisor. Okay, this guy he works for Google now. I think he was running Singularity University. So anyway, so he has this like string of like books like from like back like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, predicting this like natural progression of like information technology and like information processing power. So he like plots on a graph and he says, have you seen this? Like the best computer on earth could be like as good as an ant at this point, and like eventually $1,000 computer will be able to process more information than a human mind by a certain year. And then, by 2030 or 2040, we'll reach a point where $1,000 microchip or computer chip can think or do as many computations as all of humans on Earth, right? And it kind of feeds into like the whole Moore's law
Wait, which year did you say?
conversation by
Which
like
year?
2040, I think
20.
2040.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think 2040 is kind of an important year for Bitcoin too, right? Like won't 2040 by then like Bitcoin, I think 99% of all Bitcoins or something will have come into existence.
Yeah.
Um, and Bitcoin, I truly believe that Bitcoin, like the founder of Bitcoin understood these principles of kind of information technology and how it's like progressing and Moore's law, and designed the network to kind of to address that, which I think is one of the most coolest things about it. So I actually believe, and this is probably a bit controversial, maybe not, but I actually believe that Bitcoin is the first real, like, true form of like global artificial intelligence. Like it's in the sense that it's like self-governing and it has like all these elements to it that I find very exciting. Okay, so but your question was like, look, do I think AI is going to take over the world? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. And Kai Fu Lee, that's one of his kind of final, points in the book is as well, is he believes that in order for that to happen, you need 4 or 5 major computational kind of like breakthroughs to happen, and maybe we'll have one happen in the next 20 years. So
Do
he
you know
doesn't
which these
believe
are?
which these are. Yeah, so he has my favorite part of this book, which I think is relevant, is this right here. Here, I'm going to show you something here in half a second. So um yeah, so risk of replacement. So to me, this is the main takeaway from, oh, look at
Yeah.
that.
This doesn't
You
really.
see,
You're
yeah, you're
trying
not
to
going to be
show
able to
me
see it.
something, but I can't really see it. You'll have
Okay,
to
so I'll
read
just
it.
tell you what it is. So it's like and so I'll just tell you what it is. So on this side, he has, this axis is asocial and social. So the higher you go, the more social the jobs are, right? And the more right you go, the more creativity and strategy based you are, and the more left you go, the more optimization based you are. Okay.
Mhm.
So this quadrant is like a wedding planner. This is like a teacher or a doctor. This is this here. This is what he calls a danger zone. For example, telemarketers. Basic translators, radiologists, right?
Right. So
And
that's
so, but then,
that's the corner with least social and most optimization. That's risked by AI the most. Yeah, that makes total sense.
and whereas on the top right, you have CEOs, you have, PR directors, you have psychiatrists.
Where
Anyway, so
where where do we find journalists? Am I safe for now?
where do you find me on the list, or you?
No,
Sorry.
journalists. Yes,
Oh,
me.
journalist. Well, I mean, I just read PR something journalist on the top right. So I think you're good because like well, you're having to. I mean, this is social, and I don't know, but don't take my word for it.
Given my skills, I think AI could probably replace it within a couple of years.
No, come on. No, I would definitely not agree to do a podcast with anyone that's going to get replaced in the next 5 years. Maybe seven, but
So,
carry
so
on.
is it what does the book propose that these in the bottom left, which you showed, the highly optimizable and non-social jobs, they're very replaceable, but are they all replaceable eventually, or what's the story?
No, I mean, no. So if you're a CEO, if you're somebody who needs to, again, interact with people, simultaneously have to think creatively and strategically, you're good. So yeah, so my suggestion, so my takeaway was, no, we're not going to get replaced by AI. Um, but if you want to be, if you want to protect yourself from this, make sure that whatever you do, you're not just trying to optimize around optimizing. You're optimizing around thinking strategically, thinking creatively, and then the other thing is ideally a role where you're engaged with people. Yeah, so again, I'm not worried about it. I think it's gonna be amazing. This singularity that I kind of alluded to, the technological singularity. If you haven't heard about it, it's pretty fascinating. But the long and the short of it is that what they're essentially hinting towards is a point in time where humans live forever, um, essentially, and then that's kind of the, I don't know if you've heard of guys like Aubrey de Grey, this guy with the huge beard, but they're talking about things like about, not just stopping the aging cycle, but eventually reversing it in our lifetime.
Yeah. Do you know
And
about the extropians?
haven't heard that. What's that?
Yeah, so they were a
Extropians.
group that was California based, and they were a group of sort of realist utopians that were also thinking about this kind of stuff. Eternal life is one of them, and merging computers with human brains, or these, like all of these kinds of things, sort of post-humanism. That's very closely related. And some of the people in that sort of group were, for example, Hal Finney, Nick Szabo, Tim May, like a lot of they sort of, a bunch of them sort of went on to found the cypherpunks. So there's a lot of overlap there, and then the cypherpunks, of course, sort of resulted in Bitcoin, among other things. So there's a overlap in interests again. But
Hmm.
I
Interesting.
haven't heard of the guy you mentioned. I don't think I know who he is.
Oh, Raymond Kurzweil or Aubrey de Grey?
But
Raymond Kurzweil's.
letter.
Oh, okay. Aubrey de Grey. Yeah, I've actually had a chance to meet him in person too. He's a pretty phenomenal guy. Yeah. No. And then again, I don't know. I don't again spend a lot of time or whatever energy on that, but yeah, I hope I get to live forever. I mean, you want to talk about religion? I think
You wanna?
these these types of. As I was going to say quickly is that these types of conversations or whatever around singularity. It feels like to me a lot around kind of, people trying to be, manifest a lot of what the religious texts were talked about in kind of, the human realm by leveraging technology, nanotech, biotech, all these things.
Exactly. What about space travel? Is that something you're into? Looking forward to? Would you go to Mars if you got the opportunity? You had to stay there, Sonny.
So when I
One
was
way trip.
working for, so would I go to Mars? Oh, one-way trip? Hell no. I love
No.
Earth. Oh no, no. But I did work, like I said, 8 years for robotics, and the gentleman who owned that company, Dr. Jacob Apkarian, was one of the people that worked on the Canada Space Arm. And so we built, I think we were part of one of the rover projects that for the Mars, yeah, whatever outreach thing. And so, yeah, I've been, uh, would I want to go to Mars one way trip? Hell no. Return, but if it took like 5 years, I might still say no.
Well, if you
Um,
live
you know,
forever,
hell yeah. If I live forever, all I can do is make a copy of myself on Earth, and I'm set, right? And then I can experience both simultaneously.
Well, that's the other that's the other thing they would chat about a lot. The extropians, like mind uploading your mind into a computer.
So Raymond Kurzweil's famous quote is that in the end we will discover that we were not hardware, we are software. Yeah.
Exactly. You agree with that?
Look, I think the universe is comprised of nothing more than information and energy, right? And that's, I think, everything, even matter, like what is it? Energy equals mass times a constant, right? C squared. So mass is energy. So yeah, I can believe that we are nothing but information and energy.
Do you think we're going to Mars? Are we gonna see it happen?
Oh, definitely. Well, if I'm living forever, 100%. Is it going to happen in the next 15 to 20 years? Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to happen because I think he's figured out the piece that nobody else did, which is how do you land a rocket ship, right? Because I mean, now we could technically
You mean
go to
Elon?
Mars and then fly back. Yeah, Elon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a pretty smart guy. Or seems like it.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a little bit more to figure out. How do you stay alive on Mars and these kinds of things? I don't
Have
know.
you seen Total Recall?
Uh,
Total
at,
Recall,
at some
Arnold?
point, I
No.
think. Yeah, yeah. Probably more than 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking it's maybe like 20 years ago for me, but yeah, that was Mars Living didn't look so fantastic in that movie. But you never know, man. You never know. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm super happy here in Toronto. Not looking to go anywhere. I
Oh,
don't even like flying,
we
let
forgot about
alone.
the other topic. I still want to hear this. What were the computational breakthroughs that were needed to achieve AI? That was the question I asked, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember. I read this book about 6 months ago. Okay, let me just think for a second. What were the computational breakthroughs that you needed? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I know I kind of diverted the conversation towards like practical things that people should know in light of AI, but I don't remember, Aaron, to be honest. Maybe I'll have to get back to you on that one. Um, I'm trying to think if it was like deep learning related. Yeah, I could probably flip to it now, but anyways, I'll leave it for another time. No, I don't have the answer for you.
No worries. Anything else? Have you seen any good movies?
Any good movies? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. Paw Patrol.
Paw,
Paw
Paw
Patrol.
Patrol.
Paw Patrol. No, no,
I
it's a
don't.
kids show. Sorry, man. I actually don't. I'm not even allowed to watch TV in my house. I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old won't even let me sit in like the seat that I want to sit in. She'll literally be like, "That's mine." So I don't know. I haven't watched a TV show. I play a bit of StarCraft. I don't know if you've ever played that.
No,
Such a fun game. It's
I'm
like,
playing.
mm,
I'm playing
which
Donkey
one?
Kong Country 3 again.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, I've been getting into StarCraft. That's been fun. It's like a strategy game. It's like a futuristic war strategy game. It kind of feels like you're on Mars, but yeah, that's a lot of fun. But no, I have been watching movies lately. Yeah, every time I try and watch a movie, I think my attention span is like too short. I fall asleep, or maybe I watch them too late or something. But my wife always hates on me for that. She's like, "You can never stay awake during a movie." But what about you? What's the best movie you've seen recently?
Ah, man, I don't watch a lot of movies. What's a good movie I've seen recently? Hmm. I don't know. I wish I could give you a good answer. I don't even
That's
remember
okay.
what I've
Hey,
seen.
Aaron, you know what's gonna be a great movie? The Bollywood movie that we make about the whole story in India. Like I've only
Is
maybe
this a joke
shared
or is it serious?
it's a joke that will eventually become serious
Got it.
because so if any like I know you have a huge network of famous Bollywood producers that follow this show. So if there's anyone out there that wants to produce the tell-all, let's go get it. But no, I think that's going to be a super interesting one. I'm definitely taking careful notes and remembering kind of what's going on. But wow. I was gonna say is another thing is that to really kind of get the background story or the ins and outs, you might want to interview Satvik or Harish, two of the guys that were really in the thick of it. I'm more of like the storyteller, like the guy who, kind of like shares a lot of the things that are happening, but in reality, those are the guys that really went through a lot of it. So yeah, you might want to chat with them. And also if there's anyone else at Kraken that you want to talk to, just let me know.
Sure.
What other topics you got on
Yeah,
mind? We talked about AI. Yeah.
let's end the podcast with one last sort of Bitcoin related topic. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
1917. That's a movie I saw fairly recently. That's quite good.
I saw it. It
It's good,
was
right?
good. I saw
Yeah.
it. That I did see. That was one of the few movies I saw. Yeah, I liked it.
Happening. What do you expect? Is it priced in? What's gonna happen?
Yeah, sorry. Just on that topic, I was gonna say. So I saw a meme the other day. Somebody was like, "Our grandparents had to go to war. You have to sit on your couch. Like
Yes.
you got this." That puts into perspective. It's like, yeah, we're going through a lot. But
Well,
so was your
to be honest, the healthcare workers they have it a little bit tough, maybe. Well, for sure, I think.
Yes. Yeah, they definitely do. My heart goes out to them, and yeah, and the elderly people too, right? Like I'm a little bit concerned. Like I know we've had a breakout in terms of the a lot of the old folks' homes here, and that's probably not the politically right term, but yeah, unfortunately there's been a breakout, and I think from what I heard, Ontario is sending out a lot of the nurses and kind of professionals on the front lines to these places, but yeah.
Happening.
Okay. So your question was about happening, like the
Yeah, is it
happening
priced
coming up?
in? What are we gonna see happen?
Oh, this is probably like my answer to religion and politics, in the sense that I don't know. However, if we use our common sense, I think Adam or someone retweeted this recently. Adam Back is like, this is like the quantitative hardening.
Yes.
Yeah. What an awesome phrase, quantitative hardening, right? Um, Look, supply and demand, right? Like, I mean, if you don't believe in supply and demand, then I guess you could argue that this will have maybe no consequence or negative consequence. But I do strongly feel that this is an interesting time, right? 50 bitcoins, 50 Bitcoin networks, 50 bitcoins with a big B were printed out of thin air. It's happening globally. And so if you believe in supply and demand, then it could be argued that Bitcoin is going the other way, from a quantitative easing standpoint. And then if you believe that it has some sort of value in the sense that, it's a unit of account, you can move it around, it's open source, it's censorship resistant, it's got all these like beautiful elements, then yeah, then you would believe that the price would go up. However, I am not a financial advisor, and yeah, so I definitely don't like. And I used to be a financial advisor like 20 years ago, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. And yeah, and I think it was because I was in the financial industry that I love Bitcoin even more, because to me it just smells of roses. Yeah, man. So yeah, so I think it's gonna have a positive impact in a lot of word, in one word, two words.
Yeah, I got that impression that's your perspective.
Yeah, I love Bitcoin, man.
Hey, I didn't learn anything about Corona in India or Corona in Canada, but I had a fun conversation. So
Yeah, man. Those are boring
thanks.
topics.
Thanks
Come
for
on,
being
like
on,
those are
Sunny.
depressing. Yeah, Aaron, thanks again for having me. And I mentioned this before our call, but really, like, I get a lot of requests to go on podcasts, but I usually say no or I ignore it. But for you, man, like I know you've been doing a lot of great work in the space for a very long time, and I really appreciate it. And just the opportunity to get to talk to you for an hour was more than worth it.
Cool. I appreciate that.
Okay, take care. Bye bye,
See you
Aaron.
around, Sunny.
Cheers.